positive turnout. Already 8 thumbs up.
You started talking like before the ding happened. You got to wait for the ding.
Oh, the
now
ding?
we've had the ding.
Okay. Well, we're joining you a little early. We're so excited to get on this and start bad-mouthing Japan because we hate Japan, right? Right, Hiko?
That's right. That's right. And so I'm leaving. I've decided as a result of this of this war legislation that I am packing and I'm going to Phuket like tomorrow.
Yes, you actually are leaving the country.
I am actually leaving the country.
That's how worried he is.
I am. Yeah. I'm crapping my pants. Okay, I just had to pause my video there. So yeah, no, this I am actually packing at the moment, which is part of the reason we're going to keep it short. But Victor was all excited. You texted me. You've been, of course, sick all of this weekend.
Yeah,
and not fully,
I didn't even know news. I thought the world had stopped. You know,
which it had pretty much, except except for the areas where you're concerned. But yeah. So of course, news has been going off this week, and as usual, it's a bit like any news story. You could portray it accurately and all the nuance and do it very boring, or you could just go the very simple route and just say that Japan is coming to an end, which is much more fun. And so you start looking at the news again and you see Japan has ended. Sorry you missed that.
Yeah, I wonder if my visa's still good. Will I be interested?
Your visa is still okay. It's just you'll have to fight when you renew it.
Oh, really?
You have to fight to renew it.
It'll be like the Irish and the blacks in America, where they allow you to, they give you rights if you fight for their side.
Hey, by the way, you heard about the Peruvian dude? What the hell, dude? These Peruvians.
I know. And let me I'm glad you brought that up, because there was a Japanese fella who left a long comment. He actually copy pasted the whole article onto I did an article on the half thing because I was asked about it. And I said, why are you posting this? I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the story, actually. I didn't know. Only, vaguely I'd seen it on TV while I was drowsing in and out of my coma. Yeah. But he insisted that I make a video about it.
Yeah.
And he says, as soon as there's a crime in Japan, you always make a video. And I checked my channel. I haven't made a video about crime since June 30th. So apparently no crime has happened.
No, the reason for that, as we know, and as I'm sure that person would point out, it's because since June, all the crime has been gaijin crime, and you are hiding it. That's why.
It's my fault.
Yeah, you have to admit to that.
But we want to get off the subject, but I have to tell you something really quick.
Okay.
I have an extremely fluent gentleman who works for Toyota, who's one of my students. He is actually taking Spanish classes now. He's very fluent in Spanish, English, and he even speaks a little French, and he's incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
And anyway,
sounds like C3PO.
What? C3PO?
He sounds like C3PO.
and he runs marathons. So he's a fit guy. Yeah. So he walks up to me I think it was about 2 years ago, and he says, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He goes, I heard about that Peruvian in, I think it was Kobe, who killed that person, like little girl or something. And I said, yeah, I heard about that. And he says, so you must be pretty embarrassed, huh?
Yeah.
Why would I be embarrassed?
Well, wait a minute. I don't just for the record here, I don't think you need to be embarrassed, so long as you take this opportunity to apologize.
Yes. Because the Japanese people are very nice. They will forgive me.
Yeah. So anyway, we have promised that we're going to stick to half an hour because I have to pack and you have to go and all this sort of stuff, but we are going to keep this tight. So I'm interested to hear it from your perspective as someone, as Rip Van Winkle, waking up and discovering that Japan is no longer pacifist. What is your understanding of the situation?
My understanding is that if Japan chooses, they can choose to fight alongside their allies. So if America is suddenly attacked by Canada, which that's coming. Yeah. That's coming, right? So, I mean, sooner or later, Canada's finally going to say.
You can only make so many Canada jokes before they invade.
It's all South Park's fault, but yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get rid of Drama Tube because this is a guy who I just don't care about, and I thought
you cared about everybody.
No, I don't even know if it's a real person, but let me just block him here. He's on the wrong channel. He's old classic YouTube days. You don't know who he is, do you?
No.
He's classic troll, YouTube troll days. If he's real, he'll make a real video about it. But
Anyway,
remember
I see you're obviously not a pacifist. You're like a first strike type. I can see that.
like I see you thinking about smoking. Pah!
I think you guys should just talk it out, man.
Phoenix, shut the fuck up. He asked me what my first impression was, and that's all I know because I have not been watching the news.
Yeah. So
Phoenix is a little pussy who's always trying to drum up drama. I should have held him down and given him a haircut. This guy's so proud of his hair, and Hiko, men who are proud of their hair, there's something wrong with them.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. That's the truth.
Okay.
Is Japan in here?
Say again? Is there a way to get rid of this guy? I don't know.
Yes, you can moderate in the comments.
Okay, everyone just ignore the drama tube. I don't know what he's doing.
Please. You just woke up. Tell me. So, what is your impression? What happened? I mean, so has Japan abandoned pacifism? What's your understanding of what's happened?
So, my understanding is that they can choose to support their allies if they want to. Now, they can send their troops to fight alongside America if America is attacked and they choose to. That's what I understand, though. I haven't really, like I said, haven't read into it.
Well, maybe zoom out a little bit.
That's why we're doing this, so I can figure out what the hell's going on.
But based on what? What happened that they can do that now?
Oh, because they passed that thing that what is it? They passed legislation. The coalition,
Passed a law.
Abe's yes, the Abe's coalition, ruling coalition passed, but everyone's opposed to it still, and other people saying they're still going to fight it. I don't know if you can fight something once it's passed. It's pretty hard, I think, as far as like if there's anything like the USA. Once a law is passed, it's going to take a long time to get rid of it.
Yeah. So, okay, I can already, in my head, I can feel like I'm just going to spaz out all over this and you can't be boring. But, yeah, okay, so shall I be boring and just explain what it is for a minute?
No, but it's not going to be boring. Go ahead, go for it.
Okay, so basically, go back to 1989 or 1990, the original First Gulf War, when the whole world, it was like the best thing since the Olympics. Everyone got together to go and take turns punching Saddam Hussein in the face after he invaded Kuwait.
Madonna's hit song "Like a Prayer" was
actually, for some reason, I remember that Bette Midler from a distance was like CNN. I remember CNN telling us that was like the #1 song among troops there, which I totally still don't believe. But, this was a long time ago. But basically, at that time, I mean, that was remarkable. They were telling the Israelis not to do anything so that the Syrians and the Saudis and everyone was, like, taking turns. It was like one of those kind of human chains where America was joining hands with a lot of its enemies to take turns just, like, bombing all over Iraq. And
they were bombing all over Iraq?
Yeah, they're bombing Iraq because of the invasion of Kuwait. Mm-hmm. And at that time, Japan's contribution to this fantastic party that was being held by America, in the First Gulf War, was to write an enormous check. And at that time, Japan was berated in the media, by politics, Japan was like, how come Americans spend so much money on the defense of Japan? And, when we've got a war that, and everyone's pitching in, even New Zealand was dropping bombs on Iraq. What? It was such a, we have like Vietnam War era, like 2 or 3 fighter jets, and we sent them there. And they're publishing the scores of how many planes had been shot down by different armies and so on. But Japan only sent money and it got no respect for sending money to, a war that everyone was like dropping bombs on. And it became a real point for a lot of politicians.
Nathaniel, why the fuck would I know anything about New Zealand in 1989? I didn't even know they were different from Australia. Okay, go ahead, please.
I find
I'm supposed to remember this. He's surprised I don't remember this 1989 story.
Yeah. Well, the first Gulf War anyway. Japan got a lot of shit.
I was 20 years old, and I was 21 years old, and I was
years old.
in New York City.
Yeah. Well, come think of it. I was 14 years old. Damn. Holy shit, I was 14 years old during the First Gulf War. So anyway, but I was a geek. So, yeah, basically Japan got no love over the fact that it sent money. It was supposed to be this pacifist country that sent money, and everyone's like, yeah, Japan's just, paying other people to fight their wars, and, they're not really pacifists because they're paying for wars and they're just pretending. So basically it got no credit for its contribution. And actually there was a time, I think George Bush Sr., when he was listing off the countries that contributed to the coalition, and he actually left Japan out, even though Japan sent trillions of dollars for it. And basically,
No,
Japan,
I remember the big bunch of money. I didn't realize that Japan received no acknowledgement.
Japan was left off a number of prominent lists of of Academy Award acceptance speeches for having been a member of the party.
They're basically the nerd in the group, right?
Yeah, they were kind of the outcast.
They're limousine and they don't get laid.
And I think there was Nakasone back then or whatever, but there were a lot of people within the government at that time who went on to become members of the Democrat Party and other parties, but basically there became a very big movement. That was the prompt for Japanese to kind of think, well, we need to actually expand the scope of the SDF law towards collective defense so that we can join in these coalitions. Although up until that point, it's acknowledged the Constitution of Japan, which was written by America to stop Japan ever invading anyone again, said that Japan's not allowed to use force to resolve any sort of dispute. And there's only one exception carved out, which was purely for self-defense.
Someone attacked them, right?
So pretty much since 1990, Japan's done these little baby steps of trying to go forward without breaching the Constitution, but trying to
1989 embarrassment.
Yeah, basically, it might have been 1990, actually, come think of it. It was 1990. But since that time, so during the 90s, right, Japan started doing peacekeeping and stuff like that. It passed a law to allow itself to participate in UN peacekeeping. So they went...
But they basically supply water to the other troops.
Sure. They're the water boy. You saw the Adam Sandler movie, Water Boy there. Except they actually just carry water. They don't actually play like Adam Sandler. They
actually carried water.
They actually do.
That must be embarrassing when you're a soldier. You're out in the. Would you like some water?
Well, it's baby steps. So, and I think the first overseas mission since World War II that Japanese military was sent to was Cambodia, and that was like in 1992 or something like that. And there was always this question, well, what happens when they actually have to defend themselves, or they're actually, in a situation where they have to defend refugees? And so, they keep passing these laws saying, whatever you do you're in peacekeeping. Right. But so far, and over time they've kept tweaking, and they've had little interpretations that say, okay, they can provide fuel for like American aircraft carriers and stuff, like in the Second Gulf War. So they're not just sending money now, they're sending actual logistics and so on. And so they actually get on the list of people who are being appreciated for it. But it's kind of funny, the Democrats, the DPJ and the LDP and everyone was sort of agreed that there are still major gaps. And the biggest gap currently in what's recognized as Japan's allowed to use is that, how there were like, how many, 30,000 American troops in Japan, or 50,000 or something crazy, 50,000. So
Americans, I'm assuming like 90% of those are troops.
Right. It's some figure. There's actually more U.S. troops in Japan than in Korea. So there's always this thing about
Jews in New York City than Israel. And
really?
Puerto Rico too.
No.
There are more Jews in New York City. Jews in Puerto Ricans in New York City than there are in Puerto Rico and in Israel. Actually, I don't know if that's true, but I was heard that was.
There are actually more Niueans and Nauruans in Auckland than there are in Niue and Nauru. You don't know where those are, do you? Don't worry. So there are more Niueans who live in Auckland, my city, than there are actually in Niue, which is a small island.
I don't know what Niue is.
It's okay. So
is there an old day as well? Or?
No. It's never mind.
Okay.
Point is, focus. So point is that the biggest gap is this. If Japan is attacked by North Korea, Japan is allowed to defend itself against North Korea, right?
Okay.
If North Korea wants to really attack Japan, though, probably what they'd do is or China wants to attack Japan, the first thing you'd probably do logically, you're China, you'd bomb all the US bases first, right, that are here to defend Japan. Under the current interpretation of the way that Japan is allowed to use force, Japan would not be allowed to use force to defend the US forces that are defending Japan. I.e., if there was a missile coming to hit, if Americans defending the Japanese were under attack, the Japanese self-defense forces are not allowed to come to the defense of those US forces that are in the act of defending Japan.
Even if this is in Japan?
Yeah, well, that's the interpretation. So, and it's not until they actually get fired on themselves, they can't come to the defense of the US forces.
Right.
So there is a big nervousness given that, America is kind of getting more and more pulled back, and Donald Trump saying we're going to get everyone out from overseas bases and, close all the overseas bases. Why would America, America probably is good to its word. The last 70 years, it will defend Japan, even if Japan will not defend America or defend those troops that are defending Japan even. But there is a kind of a thing now. Why would really, how long can we rely on that good faith? And honestly, how long will the American public support the idea of getting into a war with North Korea or China for Japan when Japanese troops are not even allowed to defend the US troops?
Right.
And that's a good question. And this,
people like Trump pointing that out.
well, that's exactly what he's pointing out. I mean, he's actually pointing out the whole motivation for this law. And he actually pointed that specifically out, and he's right. And actually, both of, thank you, Captain Canuck. Thank you for defending my bald head. If you have, sorry, I see someone saying that they defend my bald head, and I completely lose my train of thought.
It's great. I agree, Captain Canuck. Good job.
Thank you, Canucks. So yeah, so basically it's ridiculous. So like from a long time ago, like from when the Democrats were in power, they were going to pass a collective defense law. And everyone's kind of agreed this is a stupid situation, and we need to do a reinterpretation of the Constitution or whatever, or pass a law that fixes.
So that was my question. Is this that reinterpretation?
It is. And what was interesting was that the opposition, the Democrats and the LDP, and everyone was kind of on board on this until 6 months ago, that where there's the two problems with the legislation that were passed is that this whole thing about determining whether this is a situation that still is kind of legitimate defense, like it's collective defense, but only collective defense extending to people engaged in defense of Japan. Right, so it's not collective defense like invading Afghanistan because it was attacked by some Saudi Arabia. Yeah, they say that this wouldn't get them into the invasion of Iraq or Afghanistan, is what they're saying. But the way the legislation is drafted, the judgment as to whether this is really an attack on Japan or not is up to the judgment of the cabinet at the time. So it's whatever Abe thinks is a legitimate self-defense. And what was interesting was everyone was kind of on board that this was okay until I don't know, it was like about 2 or 3 months ago, the LDP was having a committee hearing about a different law, and there was a question asked. Well, these were constitutional experts who were talking about some other. There's a constitutional reform panel which they're also looking at about. Actually, it was about the voting age and about things about having a referendum to lower the voting age to 18. And when they got these constitutional experts in that the government asked for, and they said, well, while you're here, that security law, do you think that's consistent with Article 9? And every single one of these government-appointed constitutional experts said, no, if you ask me, I think that totally violates the Constitution. And that kind of was the spark where a lot of people would have been opposed to the security law anyway, but as soon as you have a bunch of objectively very smart people, and it turns out a huge consensus of constitutional experts saying this is totally outside of what the Constitution allows. Right. That all of a sudden, that kind of triggered, okay, it's okay to be angry at this law now. And all of a sudden, the Democrats who were in support of the law said, oh, well, if it's unconstitutional, we can't support it. But that's also stopped them from being really energetically against it. But of course, there's been this huge kind of grassroots protest movement, which has come up around the idea that, not so much in my mind, actually, the content of the law. There are problems with the content of the law, but it's more the idea that why is Japan passing any sort of law that makes it easier to get into wars? Why do we need to pass a legislation that increases the number of scenarios that Japanese might end up in a war at all? What is Abe really trying to do? And that's the kind of suspicion which has generated this grassroots movement, and also that's led to the tagging of the security law as being a war law, which is what they keep calling it.
Well, China is pointing that out. China's pointing out that the Japanese people are against it, and we hope that Abe listens to his own people.
Yeah, because China really, really worries about the opinions of the people when it comes to making laws, right? I mean, China's being completely self-serving and hypocritical. You talk about any thing that's China considers its domestic affairs or laws, especially this sort of thing. They tell everyone to butt out, but no, in this case, yeah, it's kind of self-serving, and it's also known. I mean, China pays, and China pays NGOs. They fund NGOs that protest against the bases in Okinawa, and I'm sure that they're definitely contributing to these to the SEALs movement that's protesting against this. They actually invest.
It was pretty successful. They were protesting here in Nagoya as well.
Yeah.
From what I see all over Japan, but they failed. So what about North Korea? Have you heard anything from them?
I think they're pissed off as usual.
But they didn't announce they're gonna. We will attack. You heard there's some bullshit last week about a nuclear attack against the USA if USA continues.
Not a new. They said that they're going to do two things. They've scheduled a test of a long-range missile which can reach US shores to demonstrate they have a missile, and they're thinking about also doing a nuclear test, another nuclear test again, to show that they have bombs and they can manufacture them, which is why they just restarted this nuclear power plant that they use for making bombs with. So they did this back in '95, and Clinton gave them a bunch of money in exchange for, and South Korea did as well, in exchange for shutting down its nuclear plant. But now they just turned its nuclear power plant on again, and they're trying to do the same thing again. So it's just another way of it's like aggressive begging. And I'm sure if we just paid them a bunch of money, of course, they're going to be good and never do it again.
Right.
So,
there was a German commenter. He was one of the most boring commenters I've had. Nothing against Germans.
Germans are pretty exciting in my experience. It surprises me that you would have a German commenter.
Well, they have a reputation for being meticulous, but this guy was meticulous to the point of being boring.
That's kind of disappointing.
Huh?
That's kind of disappointing. I think of, Germans are kind of angry and exciting.
Sure. He's the exception. I have lots of German friends, but anyway, he seemed to be proud that North Korea had developed a nuclear bomb, and he thought it meant that they were superior to Japan because Japan had never done this.
Sounds like a troll, but yeah.
I don't know. He's not a troll. He's actually incredibly boring. He keeps pointing out all these an
incredibly boring person is proud that North Korea has developed a nuclear bomb because it makes them better than Japan. That doesn't sound boring.
That's just the beginning of it.
Oh yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, wasn't there some case years ago in which Japan admitted that they had allowed the USA to bring a nuclear bomb into Japanese waters they admitted it. Do you remember what this was about? I don't remember the exact.
Well, not only has America brought atom bombs into Japanese territory, even though technically it's against the law in Japan to do that, there's the 3 anti-nuclear principles that they don't allow them to be stored in Japan. New Zealand had the same fight with America, and America's policy is not to confirm or deny when they have it. They just don't say, right? So you don't, we're not going to tell you, so you won't consciously do it. New Zealand said that's not good enough. You have to tell us because we passed a law against it. And when America said no, they cut off New Zealand completely, economically, defense, everything. With Japan, they don't go as far as New Zealand did. They just kind of let it go. Not only has America been storing nukes, no question they've been storing nukes in Japan, they actually dropped a bunch of hydrogen bombs off the side of an aircraft carrier in Okinawa back in the 60s, and they never recovered them. Right? America has actually accidentally dropped hydrogen bombs in Japanese waters.
So they're still sitting there. That's the next Nicolas Cage movie.
I guess they might. I don't know. It appears they didn't go off, but they have actually. Not only have they been carrying nuclear bombs around in Japan, they've been accidentally dropping them and losing them as well.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
So you'd be an idiot to presume that Japan has not been hosting nuclear weapons.
That's what I was thinking you would say. Yeah, that's what I think as well. But I don't really have any articles that link to it or anything. But so what do you think is going to happen? Will anything change? Oh, and why do you think Abe did this? Is it sword rattling?
No. The thing is that the purpose of the law and the content of the law, this whole idea that if you get in a fight defending my wife, I'm not allowed to defend you. That's retarded, right? I mean, put simply, the law is stupid common sense in terms of its objective. But of course, the fact that it's Abe doing it and doing it now, and maybe he has other agendas and all that sort of stuff, that's what makes people worried. And the fact that there's enough vagueness in the law that he could apply it differently, beyond that. That's what's concerning people. For me personally, I mean, I must admit, I always said since Abe came in, I know everyone thinks Abe is like the next Hitler or something like that. And I always just said, don't be so stupid. Abe got in because of the economy. He got in because of Abenomics. And even if he wants to rewrite the constitution and draft everyone into the military and invade China or do whatever, he's not that stupid. He's a lifelong, he's a 3rd or 4th generation, lifelong politician. And he's not
power, right?
No matter what stupid things he thinks, he's got enough self-awareness. He is careful with the words that he uses in public and what he does. So I didn't think he'd actually go as far is kind of doing this. Everyone says he's motivated by.
I'm honestly surprised he got this far, though. Were you surprised?
No,
but he would do it.
Well, but what is interesting now is everyone's saying now that this law, after it's passed, is probably going to get constitutionally challenged. And according to like just about every constitutional scholar in Japan, it's probably going to be ruled, like an illegal law. That's what makes it interesting that he went through it with it anyway, actually, when it kind of became clear that this is probably trying to pass a law before changing the constitution. Is probably his mistake and probably what will affect this legislation. In terms of what's motivating him, it's interesting. This is the second major security law in Japan since World War II. And the other one before led to huge demonstrations and riots. It was actually the trigger that founded the Red Army terrorism movement. And that was the AMPO security law from 1953. And that was passed by his grandfather when his grandfather was prime minister. And his grandfather was kind of hated by the left for passing this law, which triggered the entire radical left-wing movement in Japan. And a lot of people interpret this law as being like...
His grandfather created all of his present-day enemies, you think?
Well, in a way, you could say Abe this is kind of his grandfather's unfinished business. This is like the law that his grandfather would have wanted to do, but he kind of watered it down back in 1953. But even that much, just the fact that it created this, it formalized the security relationship with America, it formalized the relationship between the LDP and America and so on, and, which the left thought was a huge sort of betrayal and so on, and started the whole protest movement. And a lot of people are kind of saying, well, he's motivated by the legacy of his father and wanting to, he's channeling his grandfather, which I always thought that was like, I think you're not giving the guy enough credit for being his own man. But I'd say watching it now, given the protests and given what public polls are showing, that no one wants this, no one wants it to be easier to get involved in a war, even if it's common sense.
Right. I always thought that was the, to be honest, I think it's the responsible thing to do. I mean, if you're going to live in the international community, to the international community. But I thought it was cool that Japan was doing it this way. The Constitution preventing them from engaging in any kind of war.
Okay, and bloody America, seriously.
Magic.
I'm going to stop criticizing you as a Peruvian and start criticizing you as an American now. Anything that's convenient. America has been pressuring Japan, they humiliated Japan over just sending a check to the Gulf War. They've been pressuring Japan to pull more of its own weight and contribute more all this time. But it's America's fault that it has this constitution which holds Japan back. And yet, again, Japan is doing this stuff over the Okinawan bases because America's demanding it. And Abe went and promised Obama that he was going to go and get this law passed that was going to let Japan help out America more in the region. The only and publicly, Britain, America, Australia have all kind of welcomed that Japan is doing this, and Japan is becoming a more responsible international player. It's South Korea and China that have both. By the way, South Korea has said that it expects to be consulted and it expects to have to give its approval whenever Japan wants to use this law.
Oh, really? Good luck with that.
Which is interesting. So there's some hysteria around it, but the fundamental thing is not so much what the law says. The fundamental thing about this law that's upsetting everybody is just the fact that it is moving Japan away from the direction of never getting involved in a war ever again. It's definitely it's a direction. It's a tilt away from that direction. Some would say Japan never really had that in the first place. It's had the self-defense forces. It's had.
Do you think does Japan have like a Supreme Court that will declare this law unconstitutional?
Yeah, it does, and it probably will.
Okay, so when that happens, that will give Abe a reason to attempt to actually try to change the constitution.
Yeah, by the way, there's another thing. Some people have been saying this is like a tyrannical or anti-democratic move because opinion polls show that most of the population's against it, and there are these huge demonstrations. I'm of the view on this. Japan gave Abe 2 landslide election victories that allowed him to stack the lower and the upper houses with majorities, not just to pass legislation, but also to change the constitution whenever he wants. And he could have done this by changing the constitution. He's got the numbers. The only problem is that the constitution requires a public referendum as well at the moment. And he's actually trying to amend the constitution as well. The first amendment he wants to abandon the referendum requirement.
Yeah, make it less than it. What is it? 90% now? 50%? What is it?
It's 2/3 of politicians in both houses, but
and you mean let's make it 51%,
and then 51% in the referendum. But here's the thing, you can't really say it's not democratic when the Japanese public has given him, through the course of 2 landslide election wins, 2/3 majorities in both houses. I mean, it's like Democrats. Can you imagine if the Republicans had a 2/3 majority in both houses and the Democrats were complaining about a law that they passed as being undemocratic? The Japanese public gave him the free hand to do this.
It's the old expression that a country gets the
government it deserves.
That they deserve.
That's right. Well, that's exactly right. And and the youth vote. Young people don't vote. They don't vote. They're like stoners. It's like the marijuana referendum in California. They're all, the stoners didn't come out to even vote for it, and they lost.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a marijuana referendum in California, which lost. Californians voted against the legalization of marijuana, which I'm guessing is because it relied on a demographic of people who are fundamentally too stoned to come out and vote. And it's kind of the same here. You got all these young people coming out protesting, which is great, but I wonder what they did during the last 2 elections. But of course, the thing is that in the end of the day, when you get into a war and when you got to start drafting people, it's the old people who are voting for it are not the ones who are going to get drafted and forced to fight. Which no one's saying that this is going to, some people are saying this is going to mean drafting and wars, but, I don't think that's rationally what it's going to be.
James O'Hara points out that if Japan runs out of butter, that of course, New Zealand's going to be the first target.
Yeah, well...
You cut us off with butter, that could be, you blockade us, then,
I would support invasion of New Zealand for butter, actually. I'd probably act as some sort of a mediator on that.
You'd be a spy.
I would be a double agent on that one. I would be whatever it takes to get butter into Japan. I would support.
All right. Yeah. Hey, like we told everyone, we have to keep it short tonight because we both have to get up early in the morning, and we're not sleeping with you, so it's a true story. Anyway,
that's true. It's sad but true. I because of this legislation, I am leaving the country. I'm packing up. I'm taking my son to Phuket. Screw you guys. I'm leaving.
You're on vacation. You're going on vacation tomorrow?
I'm going on vacation for a week, so I will not be able to do Tokyo Tonight tomorrow night because I will be flying. I'll be in Phuket. I'm going to do a live stream maybe from Phuket, I think.
All right, cool. When I was in Thailand, I had I was on PP Island last 2 or 3 years ago, and just horrible. But I wanted to ask you one last thing. Oh, yeah, next Saturday, no. Right?
Yeah, I'll be flying back, so I won't be able to.
And my parents will be in town for 2 weeks, starting next Saturday.
Boom. Well, tell them, give them a big hug from me.
All right. but we may be able to. They go to bed early. They're getting older, so
yeah.
Fine. But yeah, let me know whenever you get back to town. You'll be getting back next weekend, right?
Sorry.
You'll be getting back next weekend.
Yeah, I think next weekend. Yeah. Unless Japan's at war, in which case I might stay there longer.
All right.
There's no war before next week.
If you're lucky, Japan can invade Thailand, and then.
Well, that would save me the trip back. That would mean Thailand would just become part of Japan, and I could just stay there. That would be
cool. Japanese people who hear these jokes, they're not amused.
Well, they're not funny. That's the problem, isn't it?
Hey, don't bring facts into this. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, quick heads up: we are in deep in negotiations with the talent management of Deep in Japan. There may or may not be an appearance by the lovely Reina at some point in the future, if there is no war.
On that channel exactly, but we're in talks with one of them. But there are quite a few people on that channel. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the first thing we're gonna have to ask her when she comes on.
How many members does that channel have?
But. Yes, indeed. That's gonna be pretty cool. And she, by the way, she did a social experiment vid this week, which got a lot of interesting. There's a lot of people who don't like to watch social experiment videos. Although Yuta, and her do them right.
Exact one. But we gotta wrap this up.
Sorry. So anyway,
but go check out Deep in Japan. Is that it?
Deep in Japan. It was on Deep in Japan. Yes.
And Yuta changed his channel name
again. Really?
It's called Love. Find Love in Japan or something. I don't know what.
Hey, whatever puts meat on the table. That's what I say.
Right. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all the thumbs up and drama too. I'll talk to you later. You're confused, but all right. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.
See ya.
Where's the stop podcast? There we go.